Tom Meikle from Mappe joins me now at the table. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
That's not. That's a big band. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8-piece band?
Yeah, in total, I guess so. Yeah,
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
A lot of
amazing musicians that I've become friends with over the years, and for this kind of project, it was only fitting to try to realize it that way.
I could tell. It's a lot of rehearsal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm gonna try. I mean, obviously, it's an incredibly multi-layered world that you've created here, and one that the album itself does a great job at describing. But for folks who are listening to this right now, can you give us an idea of the world you sort of created for this album?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that had been on my mind sort of throughout my musical life. Concept albums were always the ones that spoke to me the most, I found.
Like what ones?
There were a handful early on. Like the first one I ever remember listening to was Kazaya by Protest a Hero, who I'm from Whitby as well. We're hometown
Ontario
buddies. Yeah,
shout out.
yeah. So that was one that hit me pretty, because it was so close to home, literally and figuratively. It felt kind of like that was a possibility, to explore that. So coming upon a second record, it's not that I necessarily consciously chose to make a concept record, but the world kind of started to appear in the form of, certain words that I'd collected. Some of the song titles are just words that stood out to me, over the past couple of years that I had written down, and then slowly that turned into landscapes, and then the landscapes kind of became the focus, and it felt somewhat of a backwards process, I guess, because a lot of the song titles, the song titles each refer to a sort of fictional landscape on the titular Isle of Ailynn. And so those landscapes kind of formed before the music did, in a strange way. And so,
you had a big list of song titles,
pretty much,
but no songs.
Yeah, which can be a little daunting.
A little bit daunting. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. But in a way, it was like, I've done some film score stuff in the past, so it's kind of like, without going too pretentious, like trying to score the film that's in your head, what I mean? At least the scene or the environment, And so each song was kind of like, okay, I know what this looks like. I know what the environment looks like, this fictional environment. Let's write music to that.
How detailed, by the way, were you drawing maps? I'm imagining those first pages of Lord of the Rings where you see the map and you're
exactly.
just kind of like, well, I'm in for it now.
Yeah. I thought about it, but I'm terrible as a visual artist. I recruited Quinn Henderson to do paintings for each track and the cover art, and he did just an incredible job. We kind of clicked right off the bat. I was doing some sketching and stuff that no one will ever see because it's maybe it looks like a 5-year-old, making up.
Maybe the box set 30 years from now.
Yeah.
Can you give us a brief synopsis of the story?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's there is sort of an overarching narrative about this explorer character who is discovering this fictional land over the course of the album, but there's also some sort of like sub parables stuck into the middle of the record that just kind of give a sense of what the conditions are on the island and what's happening in that particular period of time. But I think the overarching narrative is just about, the thing that I was really trying to capture was this sense of discovery and exploration and I guess being unafraid to chart that territory, and in this sense somewhat in a literal way, I guess, like almost he's in my mind somewhat of a cartographer.
I think there's so much to write about, and listen, your artistic vision is your artistic vision. It's an incredibly sound one, and the record is great, but I can't help but ask, there's so much to write about in our world right now, whether it's, the geopolitical situation, all the way to like falling in love with somebody, or,
totally.
Just things but I'm wondering what kind of taking yourself out of our world might give you as a creator.
I've been living in the same world as everybody else for the past few years, and I think we all know that things have been, relatively tumultuous.
Mm-hmm.
But I think given my position in society, let's say, it didn't necessarily make sense for me, nor did I think I had much to offer in terms of a political perspective,
Mm-hmm.
But what I think I did have to offer was I was and still am, and hopefully will always cling on to that, I guess somewhat childlike, idealism or
wonderment.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to try to encourage people, not, because it is this fictional land, it feels, I think some people look to it or look at it as escapism, and I don't necessarily look at it that way. It's more capturing and magnifying, I guess, certain elements of our world that, and there's stories within that do have, their, I guess, real world counterparts, but that's not really the focus for me. It's more of a way for me to communicate that through the stories and explore that.
Well, I wanted to ask you about a quote on that. You said, although it takes place in a fictional realm, this record feels like it holds more of my identity than any work I've ever done.
Yeah. And it's, it's a strange feeling, I think, because, my first record was a collection of songs over time, as a lot of people do with their debut records. It was songs I wrote at various periods of my life about those periods of my life, and I arrived at this new place where I had, explored a lot of musical avenues, and I felt like I had this kind of, I guess, backlog of musical energy, and creative energy. And there wasn't anything in particular on a personal level that I felt like I need to, I'm going to dive into this full on and explore this on a record, whereas this concept of a concept record had sat with me for quite some time, and it happened very organically. But then it was like, I grew up on stuff like Star Wars, and I lived in that world, and I remember being a kid, and I had like a notebook full of like, I built lightsabers with my brother.
What?
Yeah.
How?
From scratch. Like, we got a Dremel, we put all the metal pieces, like we cut the metal, we did the whole thing.
Hold on, so you weren't like me with a paper towel tube.
For real.
Like you bought
wooden dowels and everything, and we rotoscope videos to make it look like we were fighting. I can't believe it.
Hold on.
I'm selling out my brother.
Hold on. I want to point out that this whole thing is all starting to make a lot more sense to me right now. Like it's all this is all starting to make more sense, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that I guess gives you a somewhat of a snapshot of what kind of kid I was,
Right,
so
right.
I wanted to try and access that energy in a way that felt, I guess, somewhat more relevant to me as an adult person, and to other people of any age, but also just to encourage that sense of wonder, like you said, that wonderment.
Is it, given the scope of this, given the, the kind of multimedia, and I know that's an overused term, but sort of the multimedia side of this, how long did it take you from top to bottom?
The song titles and all of that, the sort of world came about 2 years ago.
So was it hard to know when you were done?
Yes, it was. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I brought on a co-producer for this record, which I didn't do for the last one, whose name is Will Cran. And he and I sent him the demos, and, I think he responded to it in the perfect way, which is like, this is, a very ambitious project. I think he was the right person to go to because he found a way without compromising, the conceptual element of it, and and encouraging that, but also sort of fine-tuning the music so that it didn't feel like this onslaught of sonic information, what I mean, which sometimes that can happen. I'm just like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
I mean, that was kind of my last question is, are you comfortable with the idea that people could just listen to this and just hear a song?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. Yeah, out of the context of the record, for sure. The record is obviously crafted in a way that's meant to be listened front to back.
Yeah.
But I understand the realities of today.
But even just today, I mean, just today you're here playing a couple of songs.
That's true.
You know what
That's
I mean?
true. Yeah, and I think what I've experienced so far is that they can exist. There's a lot of music. I mean, plenty of examples of music that you listen to where you have no idea what the lyrics are necessarily, but you're responding to the emotion of the singing, of the instrumentation, all of the above. So I think it's more about layers of experience, I guess. That's something that I've talked to people about, being able to engage with it on a surface level if you want and still take something from it, but then also being able to dive into this world and learn about the characters and the surroundings and and the artwork and all of those things. I just want it to be able to be accessible on all of those planes.
Well, you know, I mean, the first time you came into our studio, I think it was your first time you performed live with the band.
That's right.
Like that.
Yeah.
And it was so remarkable, and we got
Thank
so
you
much.
for
We
that,
got
by the
so. Oh, no problem. We got so much response to that when our music producer Mitch came to me and he said, "There's a new Mappe record," and I said, "Oh, what is it?" And he goes, "Well, it's a concept record about a fictional land." I went, "That makes a lot of sense." and as always, it is really remarkable. I don't know how you do it. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thanks a lot for coming in.